This is TradeFlow News, bringing you relevant news and insights from around the world. TradeFlow News, enabling trade for SMEs and economies worldwide.
These are some of the key topics that we will be looking into in today's program.
First, let's take a look at the overnight headlines which are impacting the commodity markets. Oil prices traded up on Tuesday on bargain hunting, recovering some ground from the previous day's plunge, but gains were limited as investors remained cautious ahead of key policy decisions by the U.S. Federal Reserve and other central banks. Brent crude futures climbed 52 cents, or 0.7%, to $72.34 a barrel by 0340 GMT. U.S. West Texas Intermediate, WTI, crude was at $67.47 a barrel, up 35 cents, or 0.5%. Both benchmarks fell around $3 a barrel on Monday after analysts highlighted rising global supplies and concerns about demand growth just ahead of key inflation data and a two-day Fed monetary policy meeting concluding on Wednesday.
Iran and Venezuela want to increase bilateral trade to $20 billion, up from $3 billion, Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi said on Monday during a visit to Caracas. During the visit, the two countries signed a memorandum of understanding to expand cooperation in petrochemicals with a view to carrying out joint projects, building on their already close cooperation in oil. "We have decided to increase the cooperation between the two countries," Raisi said through translation in a statement with Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro after the petrochemical deal and a dozen other cooperation deals were signed.
Moving on to the top news in the energy sector.
Canadian biofuels producers are threatening to build their next projects in the USA to cash in on rich subsidies for clean fuel and stay competitive, a move that could cost Canada $10 billion, $7.5 billion, of investment and undermine PM Justin Trudeau's efforts to build a greener economy. Reducing fuel's carbon intensity is critical to Canada's efforts to curb greenhouse gas emissions by at least 40% from 2005 levels by 2030. Biofuels are alternatives to petroleum-based fuels made from low-carbon sources such as crops and wood waste. Fuel retailer Parkland's move in March to cancel a planned renewable diesel plant in British Columbia due partly to competition concerns about the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act, IRA, underscores the seriousness of the company's concerns.
Pakistan paid for its first government-to-government import of discounted Russian crude oil in Chinese currency, the South Asian country's petroleum minister said on Monday, a significant shift in its US dollar-dominated export payments policy. Discounted crude offers a respite as Pakistan faces an economic crisis with an acute balance of payments problem, risking a default on its external debt. The foreign exchange reserves held by the central bank are scarcely enough to cover a month of controlled imports. The first cargo of discounted Russian crude oil arranged under a deal struck between Islamabad and Moscow earlier this year arrived in Karachi on Sunday. It is currently being offloaded at the port in the southern city of Karachi.
Next, we have the top news in metal markets.
Copper prices rose on Tuesday after top metals consumer China cut borrowing costs for the first time in 10 months to prop up its economic growth, which could eventually improve metals demand. China's central bank lowered its 7-day reverse repo rate in a move that typically signals potential changes in longer-term rates to restore market confidence and prop up a stalling post-pandemic recovery. 3-month copper on the LME rose 0.3% to $8,337 per metric ton, while the most traded July copper contract on the Shanghai Futures Exchange was almost unchanged at 67,130 yuan per metric ton.
Russian aluminium's share of stocks in warehouses registered with the London Metal Exchange, LME, rose to 68% in May from 52% in April. Data from the exchange showed on Monday, as traders reported increased demand for Indian metal as an alternative. The world's oldest exchange and largest market for industrial metals has not banned Russian metals from being traded and stored in its system since Moscow invaded Ukraine, as there are no Western sanctions on Russian base metals. Large amounts of Russian aluminium in LME warehouses is a concern for the industry because it could distort pricing on the exchange used as a benchmark for contracts between producers, consumers and traders. We will now look at the top news in the agricultural sector. United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres said on Monday he is concerned that Russia will on July 17 quit a deal allowing the safe wartime export of grain and fertilizers from 3 Ukrainian Black Sea ports. Moscow has been threatening to walk away from the deal known as the Black Sea Grain Initiative, brokered by the United Nations and Turkey in July last year, if obstacles to its own grain and fertilizer shipments are not removed. To convince Russia to agree to the Black Sea grain deal, a 3-year memorandum of understanding was struck at the same time, under which UN officials agreed to help Russia with its own food and fertilizer exports.
That is all for today's news on commodity markets. Stay tuned to TradeFlow News as we continue to provide you with more updates. We also invite you to follow us on Twitter at TradeFlow News, which allows you to watch our program on your mobile device or desktop to receive information from there.